the sheep going as well, so you know you're ready for the AoE action on the weekend. Of course, this is going to be followed by another best of 7 in featuring the other Spanish bro, but we have to get through these two bros. Of course, from different parents, but still wonderful stories, right? I love that about Age of Empires 4. I can't think of any other scene that has 2 sets of bros playing competitively.
Let alone 2 that actually make it into the top 8 in the playoffs or whatever at the same time. Yeah, it's super cool. It's super interesting to watch, like, watch one of them play and then you watch the other one and you can kind of see where they're borrowing ideas from each other, or when they go, their own styles despite playing with each other so much. Yeah, it's super cool to watch.
That's kind of the heartbreaker, right? Like, in an ideal world, to avoid any family conflict, we would have stuck, a brother from each family in a different side of the bracket, but it didn't work out that way. The way we done this was based on seedings, which is why VortiX and Luciferon find themselves in the same group. PuppyPaw, of course, doesn't have to worry about having to slay his brother Wham here just yet. Instead, he must focus on the Spaniard, and intrigued to see what kind of play he's going to make against the Delhi, with the Delhi rather, against the French, because historically, French are the tempo setters, right? They're this very aggressive civ that takes control at the feudal age at a very early point.
Yeah, and speaking of tempo, it looks like VortiX is going for exactly that. There's not going to be an early wheelbarrow or anything like that from him. He's just gathering that sheep, starting to get vills onto that gold, and he's going to go for the fastest age up possible. Probably going to get out that knight as early as possible, try to see if he can hit these berries or the gold mine from the Delhi player, as those are the more exposed resources. And yeah, I'm interested to see how PuppyPaw approaches this. I believe last time I saw him play this matchup on this map, he did play very aggressively, as you mentioned. That's kind of more his style. He started out with some horsemen and spearmen, and got a quite strong lead with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup because most people are like, oh, well, knights beat horsemen. Of course, you can say that in a vacuum in a 1v1, right? But you have to calculate the cost. Of course, horsemen being half that of the knights. And also the ability to overwhelm. Like, the difference in horsemen is that they can actually chase down knights, whereas knights can't dictate when they take that fight. And I think that's why people have been surprised by how often horsemen can actually overwhelm a French player if all they're doing is pushing these knights.
Yeah, definitely. The added mobility can be very valuable. And as you said, they are half cost. And Delhi, of course, can train them very quickly, right? And they also have, the opportunity with that extra mobility to pull back those ones at low hit points, bring them back to one of those scholars, heal them up and get that extra value. And then very quickly they can mix in those spearmen again with that efficient production helping them out. And at that point, French has to start thinking about mixing in their own spearmen, or maybe making some other transitions to maybe do Castle Age and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because for a while, I'd say about a month ago, we were seeing French players experiment with Iraqs very early on, right? And mixing in spearmen. More recently, they seem to have shifted away back towards the archers. Do you think that's maybe a direct relation to the nerfs to the Mangonels, just increasing the value in having ranged units in the composition?
Definitely could be part of it. I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, there's been a couple other changes in the French meta as well, right? We've been seeing a lot of very long feudal ages, all the way up into like 100+ villagers sometimes for the French player before they consider going Castle Age. And maybe in that situation, when you're planning to stay feudal age for a long time anyway, you have the time to build up that archer mass and get it to a point where it's very difficult to engage on, because every time you engage, if you have to back up at all, you've already lost 2 or 3 units to those archer volleys.
And realistically,
looks like a little bit harass coming in here.
A little bit of poke and prod, but of course VortiX has got 1 scout at home, so it's not for free. And I guess maybe it's more thought of, like, usually when you think of the way combat played out with Mangonels in the mixer, with their previous spread, it was a threat against clumping, right? Now that threat is gone, so when you get in a fight, a ranged combat unit is able to maximize its DPS, and a formation of ranged units are always able to attack, whereas melee have to envelop. So I think that's maybe why we've seen such a ridiculous rise in popularity for archers, because just a month ago, just before that Mangonel nerf, you would never see archers in Imperial Age. Now I feel like every other game, if it goes imp, you'll see in the Pew Pew boys.
Yeah, it's definitely a contributing factor for sure. When people were making melee infantry previously, they of course, do more damage to siege themselves as well, as they can use those torches, and archers cannot. But since, yeah, as you mentioned, the threat is so much lower from those Mangonels on the ranged units, you don't really have to worry about being able to kill them as much as you used to.
Well, looks like the scout harassment has continued, but hasn't really slowed down VortiX too much. Is going into the wheelbarrow as expected, PuppyPaw already having it. And PuppyPaw, I wonder if we could get the multi-blacksmith play. A lot of Delhi players have been going for this, but up against the French, it can feel a little bit greedy. No blacksmiths at
Yeah,
all,
look,
actually.
yeah, no blacksmiths from him just yet. Looks like he is going for Sanctity as his first tech in Feudal Age here with the Mosque. So maybe his plan is just to get out a lot of units, be able to secure that Sanctity very early, and that blacksmith will come out just a little bit later than normal. To allow him to kind of build up those units early on, defend against those knights, and then push for those sacred sites.
And it looks like VortiX is doing your standardized build, right? Into the archery range, just going to go for the 1-2 punch of knights and archers. No sort of play onto the stone, which we have been seeing a lot more of. I feel like some French players on the ladders, I've noticed they've been spamming 2, 3, maybe even 4 TCs, even on open maps like Dry Arabia. But I don't feel like I've really been seeing that from VortiX and Lucifron. Like, these guys seem to be very kind of rigid, stuck in maybe kind of an older meta than what other players are moving towards.
Yeah, it could be. It could also be that he feels like he needs that extra military earlier to deny those sacred sites when Sanctity does finish in the next couple minutes here.
That's a fair point. I think that's the interesting thing about the Delhi, right? Nice textiles researched by PuppyPaw. I love that. So many players don't do this until they've lost like 4 or 5 villages, at which point you can question the worth of such a small eco. But PuppyPaw already understands. He's up against French Knights. There's a high likelihood that you lose villages, especially considering once they have the blacksmith, it's only 2 strikes, right? It's the lance in, and then the follow-up attack will take out a 50 health unit.
Yeah, and it's a really nice benefit of playing Delhi in this matchup as well, right? Since they get the textiles for free, and it doesn't research any slower than any other civ, unlike all of their other techs. So definitely makes that decision a little bit easier for him, and makes it a lot harder for VortiX to accomplish anything with these knights, as they now take 4 hits to kill villagers instead of 2 or 3.
And of course, you are playing the Delhi, so you can just whip out the Scholar and heal any damage done as well. Another beneficial thing to being one of these civs with early access to their religious units. Looks like Horsemen are starting to stack up, so PuppyPaw probably looking to flood out by about 10 minutes, and VortiX already amassing a force in the center to combat this. Could benefit from maybe getting some sort of forward outpost to also further block the sacred sites. But for now, seems to just want to set tempo aggression right outside of PuppyPaw's base.
Yep, PuppyPaw also nice positioning on the scout there, just expecting that the raids are going to come from this position, as that's where his resources are most exposed, right? Both the berries and the gold mine are on that side. Those are going to be the easiest places for VortiX to attack.
Yeah, and you can see a shift now, the whole eco moving mainly up into the wood line on the sheep, trying to delay any sort of move out into dangerous territory. PuppyPaw will move 1 villager out in that dangerous territory to start consolidating control around those sacred sites. And it looks like there is a build-up, more archers coming out soon from VortiX. But he's looking in the wrong place, and he has to be suspecting that there's going to be a move out. I mean, you are up against a Delhi play. If they're not playing out to sacred sites by about 9 minutes, something has gone wrong.
Yep, a couple of horsemen look like they might stumble across some vills on the hunt here from VortiX. That'll be some nice idle time. Might only get 1 vill, possibly 2 if VortiX isn't paying enough attention.
Yep, no textiles on his side, so easier pickings, even for horsemen, and so far out. And I mean, this is just well played by PuppyPaw. If there's something you expect the French player to do, it's to play pocket ecos, right? It's like the #1 civ for doing this. So it makes them very punishable to horsemen, not just because of the knights and what we talked about already, but also because you usually find yourself out in the middle of no man's land. And most French players don't build defensive outposts. They tend to react with them, right? Like, you probably noticed this as well. They don't usually put down the defenses before they move out. They see something's coming, and then they try to get the defenses up.
Trying to harass the gold mine here. That's the benefit of having harassed these vills a lot with the scouts, is that these horsemen could potentially have gotten a couple kills there, but VortiX on top of it.
He's keeping him on the defensive, though, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, PuppyPaw kind of has to be happy with this, because his goal is the sacred sites. And look how big the army has built up with those 2 horsemen drawing him back, baiting attention away. Now he'll move to the midfield with a sizable quantity to overwhelm VortiX.
Yeah, and I love how he decided to go for this top sacred site. He scouted the army on the south of his base, right, with that scout harassing the berries in his gold, and he was like, perfect, now's the time when I can send that villager out there, get that tower up on that sacred site. His army's not there to contest it, and now I can get the sacred site very safely once Sanctity has finished.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for VortiX to react. You can see he's shifting up to the north side now. But there is a force waiting to wrap on him. There is an outpost to worry about, and there is arrow slits coming out on that outpost, so no easy target. That means VortiX, if he wants to actually deny this, he's going to have to hard commit. That might cost you a lot of troops. Diving under the outpost with a wraparound potential coming in from PuppyPaw could actually lead to the downside, or the loss rather, of VortiX's entire army.
It's interesting that PuppyPaw is keeping his army back rather than standing on the sacred site with that scholar. He's just waiting for VortiX to reveal what he's got and then try to go for the surround or maybe choose to attack somewhere else or, you know, just give up that sacred site for the time being. And it just gives him a lot more flexibility and keeps VortiX guessing as to what he's doing.
Oh, I love this play as well. PuppyPaw. Yes, the Knights can move fast, but the Archers can't. So just a few Spearmen to defend on the south side means the Sacred Site can't be capped. In the meantime, Denial of Vision, another benefit of having those Horsemen, of course, they can chase down Scouts, and information is half of the war. And looks like VortiX is marching south. Maybe he's able to counter this out, but if he moves too fast, he might lose 1 or 2 Knights for his trouble. He really doesn't want that full cap to come out, because remember, once that full cap completes, that Scholar more or less pays for itself. So nice marching. VortiX denies it just at the end there. Gets rid of the Scholar, turns and burns. PuppyPaw's attempt will be for naught. Instead, he needs to reprioritize. Shifting now north, looks like the Horsemen are going in. And this time, that Pocket Eco might not be able to retreat any villages. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of corpses, human ones, amongst the deer.
Yeah, that looks like a potentially scary raid. 10 Horsemen as well. They don't have to fear that tower too much. They might be able to just torch this. Yeah, he's going to go for it. And that's going to force a response from VortiX, but it might be a little bit too slow.
And it's once again him going defensive, right? He's not gaining ground by doing this. Knights are marching forward as quickly as possible. 2 more rounds of torch should be good enough for PuppyPaw. Might need a third. Decides it's not worth hanging around though, so he'll shift away. Once again, just keeping VortiX on the defensive. Might now offer up an opportunity for PuppyPaw to play towards that central sacred site and maybe get a tower up.
Yeah, it looks like that is going to be the case, is that Scholar's heading to that sacred site. And even though he didn't kill any vills in that raid was still really good for him. He got a lot of idle time. He's forced to repair on that tower. And he's actually just going straight back again. He went right around the forest, looped around. He's going to hit that hunt again.
Oh, I think one
Looks
Knight
like
stayed there, so the Knight distracted him. But, like, yeah, he'll peel away. But if you just look at the numbers, you're kind of content with this. Like, yes, the military pop cap looks comparative, but it's deceitful. Look at what they've built on both sides. 29 archers, but 20 horsemen on the other side. And the spearmen will easily get their comeuppance over this small 9 count of knights. Backstab. 3 sides right now. PuppyPaw. Oh, he's going in for a Night Clash. Archers have to step back. Spearmen trying to pursue, and the Horsemen are going to wheel around the south side, and it looks like he's trapped here. Archers in trouble. They need to get away from this fast, but they can't. The bonus damage from the Horsemen is coming out, and the Archers trying to target down the spears before they can turn onto the premium unit. The Knights starting to fall quickly here. Numbers looking like they're in favor of PuppyPaw. Archer count somewhat healthy for VortiX, but no front line to keep him back, and the flood through of Horsemen too strong. VortiX looking like he's going to be forced to retreat.
Yeah, that was a great engagement from PuppyPaw. Just getting the horsemen on all sides. And, yeah, taking a fantastic fight here in the middle, although there might be just enough reinforcements coming in for VortiX to potentially turn this trade around as the spearmen start falling.
But it's the reproduction rates, right? The reproduction rates, that's the problem. Like, you're up against the Delhi. They have this efficiency with each of their racks, each of their stables. It means VortiX might struggle to actually replace the lost troops at the same speed. The only thing he's got going for him is a slight eco lead, but 4 villages at this stage, especially with a sacred site being controlled by PuppyPaw, it doesn't give you a net worth advantage.
Yeah, more fighting here near VortiX's base. I don't feel like there's enough spearmen here, though, for PuppyPaw. Yeah, he's going to have to back on out of there. Potentially going to have to give up this sacred site for the time being. That scholar maybe going to get chased down by these knights. But there's a couple spearmen probably going to live with that scholar. But yeah, good for VortiX that he didn't allow a second sacred site to come up.
Yeah, then this is the frustration playing against the Delhi, right? You have to play towards those sacred sites. You don't really have a choice. Being the French is beneficial because you enjoy longer feudal times. But even if PuppyPaw just has one of these sacred sites, like, it's slowly accruing in the required resources. In fact, if you look at it, he already has required amount of gold for going Castle Age. Food's not far behind, and it looks like PuppyPaw might sneak his way up into Castle soon. Meantime, trying to sneak his way into another pocket eco, and PuppyPaw, well, the garrison was forced out already, but he didn't go looking. And he's just going to go straight around towards the base, distracting more knights in the meantime. And you can see a raid, a counter raid coming in. VortiX making his own move. And there's only one outpost. There's not enough room in this inn. Oh, PuppyPaw. Oh, dear, oh, dear. The gluttony of the berries to the Delhi. We'll try to rush away. 1 or 2 villages will be struck down, though. Heavy amount of health on them, but heavy damage coming their way as 2 do hit the deck.
Yep, 2 villagers, not the worst trade in the world there for him. Could have been much worse. That is a lot of idle time, though, on those 12 vills, but PuppyPaw's still committing. Despite losing that food income, he is going to be aging up to the castle age, with that sacred site income helping him get that up, and already dropping down some walls on the left side to make it a little bit easier to defend against these raids, and those knights might actually find themselves trapped in a moment as a result.
They're looking pretty pinched. In the meantime, Horseman raiding through, just denying any gains for VortiX at the moment as he gets idle eco. Spearman chasing on. Are going to start to pinch the Knights here, and they might be able to at least feed back some info before they die that the House of Learning is being constructed, and VortiX is about to find himself a whole age behind, and not with a sizable military lead. Actually, if you look at it, there's not that much difference between the two. It's just going to be hard for VortiX to try and punish PuppyPaw for making this choice.
Yeah, VortiX does have the higher cost units in that military count with some of those knights, but yeah, PuppyPaw going to be in a strong position as he's queuing up knights himself, starting to get those strong upgrades like the Hone Blades on them, and just queuing up all those eco-techs, as Delhi players love to do. So yeah, VortiX has a bit of a dilemma here as he's quite far away from aging himself. He's going to try to go for the push, but as you mentioned, this might be a little bit tough.
He does at least already have the blacksmith built. He's probably going to need siege engineering because the knights alone aren't going to be good enough. There's a question mark as to whether he can get through enough of this base in the meantime, though. Lancers are going to pull it back. They don't want to give advantage over to VortiX, as he right now does have the numerical advantage. You need to scale up maybe to about 10 Lancers, then you can take a fight. Spearman in the meantime, try to defend on the deer. And this wall will come in handy as it will get PuppyPaw out to safety. And looks like PuppyPaw is trying to make a move towards the relics. A move that might be hard for VortiX to realize is happening here. The scout isn't actually going to spot it. Shifts across now, but it might be too late. It looks like PuppyPaw is going to be able to move that relic through and safely garrison it.
Yeah, VortiX reacted for a second there. He saw the Scholar, but then turned his army around, but realized he didn't have enough time to go for that. I love how active PuppyPaw has been with these horsemen, just constantly looking for places to push. But VortiX is finding the right place to harass right now. He's pushing the wood, he's pushing the hunt, and this is exactly what you need to do in this position. You don't necessarily need to push that town center, get those rams. You just need to find where the villagers are, and if you could prevent them from gathering, this whole economy is basically useless for PuppyPaw at the moment.
Especially due to where PuppyPaw set up that farmland, right? That's right on the other side of the palisade. Something that VortiX is aware of due to the scouting, and although VortiX is going to be slightly harassed in his base, it's not even going to compare to what's about to happen to PuppyPaw. He needs those farms operating. The wall's going to be breached. He's going to force a fight, but look at the healthy counter Lancers coming out. 8 in the field compared to 12 Royal Knights. Royal Knights get the charge off, so they have the comparative damage up against PuppyPaw. But PuppyPaw, he insta-switches over onto the archers, realizing his spears are being targeted out, and the spears can deter the Knights from fighting. Knights looking to re-engage, though. And PuppyPaw, he can't go for a wraparound just yet. He's trying to sidestep this, but the heavy damage coming up for the French Knights is costing him a lot of troops here. Barely any spearmen remaining. And the archer count still looking healthy, but VortiX still surrendering some ground over. And while this is happening, remember that PuppyPaw is the play on the defensive. Thus, he will be able to reinforce quicker. Scholar also making it harder to get through those Lancers. But at the end of the day, the numbers just do not favor him. PuppyPaw going to have to go back to step 1 and try to rebuild the army, as VortiX will look to renew the assault.
Yeah, that's an amazing fight for VortiX. That's exactly what he needs to keep himself in this game. And yeah, he's going to push into these farms. Denying those farms is just hundreds of wood that can't be easily replaced, as well as the couple of villager kills that's going to come in here along with the idle time. And things are looking good for VortiX all of a sudden.
Oh yes, but he needs to keep that pressure up. If he lets up at any moment, the technological lead for PuppyPaw is going to be realized, especially considering that Home Blades is now complete. And that's where these Lancers can begin to trade. And I think that's where VortiX needs to be careful, right? You need to get that initial charge out. Otherwise, your cavalry doesn't compare in terms of damage to the Lancers.
Oh, but VortiX might be facing food troubles himself as the berries have run out. I imagine those hunts are close to being exhausted as well. And if he has to make a farm transition right now, that will slow down that military pressure that he has coming every minute, and then, you know, that farm transition is just going to completely kill his chances of going Castle Age.
And that's why he's pulling out onto the deer right now. Like, he's trying to delay this. VortiX sees his win condition. His win window is in the next 5 minutes. Any later, and he's playing from behind. And that's why he begins to dive the TC. Knight just trying to clash with the Lancers here, but still no rams coming out. So VortiX with no clear way to put a dent into PuppyPaw's base. While that's happening, PuppyPaw peels off the remaining injured Lancers and rides straight into those pocket ecos that VortiX direly needs. And he'll burn down the outpost first, ensuring that the villagers have nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. In fact, he's realized late it's happening. Wait, no, VortiX. Buddy, that's not the way to get them back to safety. I mean, PuppyPaw's going to be able to peel off here and kill even more villagers. 1 or 2 spearmen are coming out, but maybe if you're PuppyPaw, do you not just throw away the Lancers to kill 4 or 5 more villagers here?
Oh, it's tough, right? If you keep those Lancers alive, even at low HP, like, they can easily kill villagers without the villagers being able to respond. But if you lose a couple knights there, maybe you lose a little bit of that pressure.
That's true. But right now, you're experiencing pressure, so maybe those trades is what you need. I mean, PuppyPaw, in fairness to him, he's only 3 villagers behind a French player at 20 minutes in the game. But we do have to remember that VortiX is still playing in Feudal. No signs of reaching up to Castle. And considering that he's not made that transition to Farmlands yet, it feels like if he wants Castle, that's easily 6 or 7 minutes away.
Yeah, he's quite far away from that Castle Age, for sure. Villager count also, like, not heavily in favor of VortiX at the moment. Like, those raids from PuppyPaw have been very strong, and even despite the kills that VortiX has been able to get on the PuppyPaw's villagers as well, it's not been enough to give VortiX a sizable lead despite the French bonus.
And now he doesn't have the leading cavalry. Look at the count right now. In fact, he's doubled up by PuppyPaw. PuppyPaw about to take one hell of a good fight here. The head patters are out. The Skull's on the front line to try and make those Lancers last a little bit longer. And PuppyPaw looking for the good trades. Is going to be able to run through that front line and then run down all of these archers. Not enough spearmen on the front line. VortiX now in trouble. This is starting to backfire quickly as VortiX looking like he has completely lost control of the midpoint of the map.
Yeah, this is looking very bad. Keep going down in the middle of the map on that sacred site. That's a fantastic way to gain map control off the back of this fight. And yeah, what does VortiX do now? There's so many Lancers out. He's got a couple of spearmen that aren't going to be able to cut it here. And he's so far away from Castle Age, as we already mentioned. This is looking like it might be PuppyPaw taking the first game.
Yeah, you asked what he can do. I think this is where VortiX takes some time to think about what's coming next, because this one is done. The goose is cooked. PuppyPaw, he may be 8th seed, the lowest rank technically, but he opens this up with a win.
Yeah, he just played that game super well. I love how active he was. Normally against French, you see a lot of players just being on the defensive all the time. And it was kind of the opposite in this game. PuppyPaw was the one who was always being active with his army. He knew he had the mobility with those horsemen, so he wasn't afraid to put them into different, parts of the map. And that enabled him to get fights like that big surround in the middle of the map like we saw. He was constantly able to hit the exposed resources from VortiX. And VortiX was hardly doing any raiding as a result in the early stages of the game there. And yeah, it really snowballed into a really good position for PuppyPaw.
Yeah, make war, get live. That's a bit in caveman terms. It's kind of how it plays in this matchup. Like, the worst thing you can do up against the French, unless you're going for a full eco boom, is just stick defensive. And I think that's where the Deli are very useful. You mentioned some of the things like the production efficiency. We talked about the sacred sites forcing this tempo around the mid-map. And also the horsemen is a phenomenal counter to everything the French do in the meta right now. It feels like it's too easy for the Deli to just play the French. And although you may say, well, we see the French win when someone like Marine Lord or maybe one of these other top players has control of it, I think that comes down to more of an outskill. Like, the Deli is a very oppressive civ and a very impressive civ in PuppyPaw's hands, giving him a point on the board, but now we move forward.